So I've got three job descriptions here. One is a supply planner job at Novartis in North Carolina, United States. One is a supply planner job at PepsiCo in India. And one is a supply planner job at Sephora in Dubai. Now, all these jobs are in different parts of the world, in different industries, in different countries, but they are all supply planner jobs, and they have got these skills that you see on your screen in common. And in this video, I will cover with you the top questions that come in a job interview if you are applying for a supply planner role. My name is Jamil Hai, and I've been working in supply chain management positions across South Asia, Middle East, and North America for the last 20 years. And my mission is to help you build real life skills for your job and career that they don't teach you in college. So do subscribe to my channel. And by the way, I'm also offering free coaching calls for anyone who is interested in applying for a supply chain job. They are preparing for their interview, or if you have questions about your career path in supply chain, or if you're trying to navigate the supply chain job market between one country and another. So you can book those calls by clicking on the link on my LinkedIn profile that you see over here. So first, let's try to compartmentalize the key skills you saw in all those job descriptions in two areas. One is the technical expertise area, and the other one is the human skills or soft skills area. And remember, we are talking about a supply planner role. This is still not a supply planning manager role, which I will talk in a different video about. And the difference will be that as a supply planning manager, you need to have a little bit more skills on the people side because you are also then managing a team. But we'll talk about that some other day. So if you look at the key skill areas in those two compartments, first of all, in the technical expertise area, you will see that these job descriptions talk about the knowledge in planning systems, ERP systems, knowledge in inventory management, knowledge in analytical skills, Excel knowledge. I'll talk a little bit about, despite we talk about all these fancy planning systems and software, Excel is still a go-to tool for a lot of planning jobs. And then we'll also talk about the S&OP process. On the people or the human skills side, these job descriptions talk about collaboration, problem solving, strong communication, and attention to detail. That's a very, very important skill to have, especially if you are trying to become a supply planner. So now let's explore some of the questions that can come around these skills. The first one is, what experience do you have in managing planning systems? Now, I've covered this question in detail in my video on top 5 questions that come in any supply chain job interview, which you can watch by clicking over here. But in that video, I just shared that you may have experience in certain planning software. So this question is a great opportunity for you to showcase your knowledge around that. So you may have worked in the Blue Yonder environment, or you may have worked in the SAP environment, or you may have worked in the Oracle environment, or you may have worked in any other planning system environment. So this question is basically asking for your skills in that area. So this is a very good opportunity for you to showcase your technical knowledge in the planning system that you have experience on. And in case you have experience in 2 different planning systems, then you can talk a little bit about that as well. How did you manage the transition and those kind of things? So in this question, you should talk about some challenges you solved with the business on the planning system itself, or if you had any experience in implementing one of these software. Second question is, give me an example of an inventory management challenge that you solved. Now, in this question, this is a behavioral question, so you will use our tried and tested STAR model, and you need to come up with a STAR story where your customers were either overstocked or out of stock, or you had a specific challenge with inventory accuracy. How did you go about and solving that? Once again, remember, this is a supply planning job interview, so you may want to provide some technical details there as well. But remember, don't go into too much detail. Your STAR story, when you rehearse it, should not be longer than 2 minutes. This is what I've also covered in another video I made about the STAR model some time ago. So keep it short. Try to make sure that these questions that I'm giving you, come up with your answer, put that in the STAR format and rehearse it as much as you can, so that when you're telling that story about your inventory management challenge, then the story is coming out naturally and you have rehearsed that. The third question is, tell me about a time when you had to manage a cross-functional conflict in the S&OP process. Now, S&OP process, without going into details, is a 5-step process. In step 1, you collect data or you do a portfolio review. In step 2, you do the demand review, which is typically led by demand planning teams. Then you do the supply review, where you check that can you supply that demand. So that step is most likely led by either supply planners or supply planning managers. The fourth step is basically your reconciliation procedure, your pre-S&OP meeting, as it's called, because before all of that data gets consolidated about what's happening in the market in terms of portfolio, what's our portfolio plan, what's our demand plan, what's our supply plan. Before it goes to the GM or the president of the company, it is reviewed in this pre-S&OP meetings. The pre-S&OP is typically led by finance, and then you go to the executive S&OP meeting, which is led by the GM or the president overall. So the role of supply planner is very, very important in that step 3. And therefore, this question is more about how do you manage conflicts? Because when you are working in the S&OP process, you are interacting with demand planning teams. Sometimes those demand planning teams may be sitting in a different group. You may be interacting with procurement or commercial in terms of raws and packs procurement. You might be working with finance because you are the one as a supply planner who is controlling the inventory, and inventory ties up the largest amount of cash in a company. So there is a love-hate relationship between finance and supply planning most of the times. So this question is really talking about how have you managed those conflicts. So come up with an example where you had a difficult situation where you were unable to explain your story to a person from another function, and then how did you convince them, or how did you get along with them? The next question is, what is your level of knowledge on Microsoft Excel? Now, why are we talking about Excel? We are supposedly in the 21st century, right? So we should be talking about fancy software, AI, machine learning, and all of that. But let me share with you an interesting statistic. There are still about 2/3 of the companies out there whose primary planning tool is Excel. And therefore, no matter what planning software you are using, your basic knowledge on Excel is extremely critical, because at the end of the day, let's say you're trying to analyze a situation, or you're trying to find out a critical business question in a certain point in time. What you will do is you will export the data. Even if you are working on a complicated, let's say, or a more advanced planning system, you will export the data from that system and you will analyze that in Excel. So therefore, your knowledge on VLOOKUPs, HLOOKUPs, pivot tables, macros, all becomes very, very essential. And therefore, this question is pretty common in supply planning roles. So if I am a supply planning manager and I'm trying to hire a planner on my team, and that person doesn't have Excel knowledge, I would be really concerned, really, really concerned. And that's why this question is important. So in this question, of course, as you're answering this, talk a little bit about how much you have used spreadsheet in the past, what kind of formulas you know, and what kind of spreadsheets you have created or maintained. One very, very common example in the world of supply planning is inventory models. So a lot of companies would do their planning in a more advanced planning system, but they would still do their inventory modeling exercise where they are putting all the different parameters of supply chain and determining what level of inventory they should carry in an Excel spreadsheet. So you may want to talk a little bit about your inventory management tool that you have created in Excel or something like that. So bottom line, this question will be asked if you are going into a planner role. So be prepared for it and try to think of how you want to showcase your Excel knowledge. The next question is, give me an example of a time when you had to work with a group of people to achieve something. Now, this is a classical collaboration and teamwork question. So, because this is a behavioral question, once again, you're going to use a STAR model. And in this case, you will give an example of a time when you were working as a part of a team. And let's say you were working on a seasonal activity. So, for example, you were working for some kind of a product launch or some kind of a seasonal activity where you were pre-building inventories and those kind of things. And then you had to work with marketing, sales, or even within supply chain, you had to work with demand planning, you had to work with materials management, you had to work with your boss. So try to come up with a star story here, where you can basically show what was the situation, what was the task at hand, what were the actions you took, and then what were the results you delivered. But once again, a very, very important question, because as a supply planner, it is absolutely critical that you are a good team player. The next question is, give me an example of a time when you made a mistake with data and what did you learn from that experience? Now, this is a very interesting question because it is testing your ability on attention to detail, and it's also testing your ability on how you deal with mistakes, because it's absolutely nonsensical to think about that people don't make any mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes in their lives. And especially when you're a supply planner, there has to be a time when because you are working with so much data every single day, you are just swimming in a lot of data. So it's absolutely normal that you may have made a mistake at some point in time. Then how did you go about it? So in this case, once again, try to come up with a star story where you explain like the size of the data you are dealing with, and talk a little bit about like, how did the mistake happen. But the recruiter is not interested in knowing like the details of how the mistake actually happened. They are more interested in knowing like, what's your ability to deal with a lot of data and a lot of detail, and then if you made a mistake around that, how did you correct it? So talk a little bit more about how, when you identified the problem, how did you first of all fix your spreadsheets or your system to make sure that that mistake doesn't happen again, and then how did you communicate that mistake? How did you manage the communication with your line manager and so on and so forth, and then what did you learn from it? So you can share things like you learned the importance of attention to detail, and the next time when you were working on the same system or the same spreadsheet, what are the additional checks and balances you put in place to ensure that those mistakes don't happen, or something on those lines, right? So, but try to give an impression to your recruiter that you have a very solid command on managing detailed information. And the last and probably the most popular question is, give me an example of a very difficult problem you have solved. So this is clearly a problem solving question. So try to think of a star story where you had a very difficult situation. So maybe you had a Christmas pre-build coming, or you had a pre-build coming for any other season in your part of the world, and you had a very difficult time working with the factory because they could not produce enough, and you had to pre-build inventory because that sales spike was coming. And then how did you collaboratively work with the factory and the marketing teams to make sure that the plan was balanced and whatever was forecasted was either deliverable, and if not, then how did you work with the marketing team to make sure that the plans were adjusted to make sure that the balance of supply and demand was maintained and customers in the end didn't go out of stock. So that's just one example of problem solving in the world of supply planning, but there could be so many others. You could have a problem with the supplier and those kind of things. So try to come up with a star story which really showcases your problem solving ability. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I've also made videos on topics like, do certifications really matter in supply chain, and what are the top 5 questions that come in any supply chain job interview. So you can watch them by clicking over here. Keep watching.